This podcast with David Hesselmeyer. This podcast is devoted to discussing the challenges, proven methods, and success stories in emergency management for all types of agencies. Here is your host, David Hesselmeyer.
Welcome everyone to the On Target Preparedness Studios and the On Target Preparedness Podcast. Today is September 29th, and I'm your host, David Hesselmeyer. Thank you for listening in. So we've got a lot to talk about today. We were told that unfortunately our last podcast did not take well, so we're going to redo some of the topics that we have here today, and or that we did last time, and so we're going to be focusing on recruitment and retention of people in fire and EMS services specifically. So let's start out with a few things that are on my heart, and I think that we need to definitely talk about for just a second. And I think we all need to be cognizant and aware of the victims in Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. I know there's a lot of people down in Texas. We've seen a lot of media here recently about it as it comes to Puerto Rico and their needs. So there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in these disaster areas that are in need. So please be thinking about them, be praying for them, and if there's anything you can do to help them, do it. If there's some way that you can volunteer your time, get connected with a good volunteer organization and do some work for them, or if there's a way to donate things, make sure you're donating things with an organization that's going to make sure that they help with the situation and that they don't cause problems with it. I put on Facebook not too long ago a post by a friend of mine, Kirby Saunders from Orange County Emergency Management, how sometimes with these disasters that simply we just throw so much stuff at it that the donations management becomes such a headache that it creates a secondary disaster. So just make sure that what you're doing is something that's going to benefit the people and not cause secondary issues. Now, another aspect that I think we need to be thinking about and still praying for is our good friends at Duke Life Flight. For those of you that are unaware, Duke Life Flight serves a lot of North Carolina in air medical transportation and critical care ground transportation. Earlier this month, they experienced the loss of a helicopter that went down. The pilot, the two onboard crew people, and the patient, unfortunately, all perished in a very sad situation. My staff and I were able to go to the memorial service held at Duke University. I must say that Duke did a tremendous job. The speakers were amazing. If you missed it, you missed an amazing memorial service for these people, and I'm so happy that we got to go. Sometimes we don't really realize how much that we have our staff or our partners, our colleagues are putting on the line until something like this happens. I think it had been 20, 30, 40 years since we've had the last medical helicopter crash in North Carolina. But unfortunately, this stuff does happen. So with those situations, and of course there's many other smaller situations going on everywhere, please be mindful that pray for these people. And like I said, if there's something you can do, then please, by all means, do that. So let's jump a little bit ahead now, and let's start talking about some of the things that have recently been going on in terms of on-target preparedness. So we have been quite busy. We've been doing a lot of different things. We have helped, we were part of the accreditation visit with Granville-Vance District Health Department as well as Harnett County Health Department, and helping them with their emergency preparedness programs to make sure that they are accredited, that their part is up to standards for the overall health department accreditation. We've also been doing a lot of site visits, which are like audits for public health preparedness in North Carolina. We've been starting to do a lot with grant writing, writing articles for different magazines and journals with grant writing. And then, of course, we are still doing a lot with the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services preparedness rule work. We'll be talking a little bit about a new project later on in the podcast that we are going to be doing with a group of people that we're friends with, and now we're able to happily call them clients, which end up becoming really family for us. So without a doubt, there's a lot going on with us, and you can definitely check out our website for more events that have happened and are coming up. And of course, as a reminder always, please go like our Facebook page. On Target Preparedness is on Facebook. We post a lot of updates, a lot of pictures. We also post things about grants that are coming open. We post about things that we have been doing, just a lot of stuff. We try to really push out a lot between our website and our Facebook page. So definitely check that out. So one of the things that I have decided to recently do is I really want to take a second on these podcasts to kind of give some shout outs to people, because of course one of the things that I've learned in owning On Target Preparedness is we're going to hear every complaint from people, but we will not hear all the positives, all the good that we do. So I want to just do two shout outs real quick. I'm happy to call both of these people my friend. Ron Pennington is a lieutenant with Charleston, West Virginia Fire Department. He is a very smart man. Hopefully you've heard of him. If not, go check him out. Google his name. He's everywhere. Sometimes I think there's 4 or 5 of them because of all that he gets accomplished. But he does a lot with fire service in terms of hoarding homes or heavy content homes, and how fire behavior is different in those types of environments, as well as the jump seat ready firefighter, being the fact that we've always got to build ourselves up to always be ready for that next call, whether it's just going for alarm bells, or whether it's a structure fire, or whether it's some person's child that stumped their toe and they need to get help, and just to support them emotionally. So Ryan has recently came out with a new firefighting glove that it's the Vanguard MK1. I was lucky enough to see Ryan when we had the Fire Rescue International convention in Charlotte about a month ago, and he and I got the time to sit down, and of course it ended up with me buying a pair of gloves because I just had to test them for myself. And I can tell you this is probably one of the best gloves that I have ever used. It was ready to go the minute I purchased them. They didn't seem like there was any need for any break-in period or anything. They were just simply pick out the right size for me and mess around with it for a few minutes, which is always something I do before I put gear in service for protection and knowledge reasons, and then literally just went to work with them. And so definitely go on Facebook, check out Vanguard gloves. They've got more products coming out. He did show me a pair of extrication gloves. Hopefully, Ryan, I'm able to mention that they're working on. But they've got some real good products they're working on, and hopefully will be out soon. And of course, I'll be in line for those. The next person I want to give a shout out to is Chief Pete Lamb. I met Chief Lamb probably about a year ago now, when I was able to hear him speak at South Piedmont Community College on the other side of North Carolina. Him and Chief Brunacini were there speaking, and I got some time to speak with him and followed up with him after that. And he has just recently had, I believe, and hopefully I won't mess this up, his 200th podcast episode. So he does a lot with training and other things in the fire service on his podcast. And, you know, I can tell you that I enjoy every Monday is generally the day that I listen to his updated podcast and just get a lot from it. He generally has some great visitors and guests on the podcast. and just always talking about stuff that is so pertinent and so up to date that you just have to pay attention and just get involved with it. So go check him out. Go check out his website, plam.com. Just some good stuff there. He's always coming out with great stuff. So there's my shout outs for this episode. And we'll be doing those as you know, like I said, we want to make sure that we give out and give kudos to those who are trying to make a difference today in the service, whether it be fire, EMS, law enforcement, emergency management. We want to make sure that we're giving the credit to those who are really making a difference. And so those were two that really were laid on my heart this time. So let's talk about it. Recruitment and retention of volunteers and staff. So this is one of the presentations that I give at different conferences, state conferences, as well as national conferences, is talking about how do we get good people and how do we keep them. So basically the first thing I always like to talk about are what are our goals of human resources. So when we're talking about people, we're talking about human resources. We're talking about resources that are human in nature and are something that are vital to every type of organization there is. There are very few organizations that can operate and function properly if they don't have this human capital. And I don't mean to use these terminologies to make it sound like that they are a possession, because they are not. But in terms of just being that, they are human resources. So there's three goals that we're always trying to focus on when it comes to human resources. And so the first one is attracting an effective workforce. So when we're doing this, we're talking about recruiting, getting the information out there, trying to find ways for people to see that we're looking for people, whether it's volunteer, whether it's career, because if they don't know, they're not going to sit there and apply. People don't generally just come up to some organization and just say, hey, can I work here? Can I do this? They're looking for some type of notification for that. So we'll talk a little bit more about all of these. The next step is developing an effective workforce. Now, this is one I'm very passionate on, and like I said, we'll get into it a little bit more in depth on it here in a few minutes. But when we're talking about this, we're talking things like training. We're talking about building these people up. We're talking about being a leader to these people, not managing them, because you can't manage resources. One of the things that Chief Lamb and I talked about when we first met. But leading them to where you are sitting there, and every time you get that much better, you're bringing them along, making them that much better. Because as a group, the better we are as a whole, the better we're going to be able to operate together. And so finally is maintaining that effective workforce. Now, what does that mean? Well, I believe that, of course, you got to include discipline in that. Now, discipline is something that's looked on differently. I've believe me, being a volunteer member of Bush Creek Fire Rescue, we often get into discussions about, can you actually have a volunteer and can you discipline them? Can you fire them? And the answer is yes. Because the thing about it is you don't want a bad apple in your organization, because that has cascading effects on everybody else, and sooner or later will rot the whole entire organization. So we're talking about discipline, but we're also talking about how do we put our group together, our organization together, to make it the best as a group. So let's jump in this first aspect as we're talking about attracting an effective workforce. So one of the first things I always tell people, and especially I did it for a year at Bush Creek Fire Rescue with leading up our recruitment and retention program, is we've got to have an idea of where we're at and where we're going in terms of our human resources. So how do we do that? we need to be looking at things like calculating our turnover rate. And again, this includes volunteers. How many volunteers do we have leaving at any one time?